Hello everyone, this is Mr. Carey coming back at you with our part 2 of chapter 4.3, Interpreting Remainders. Now in our original lesson of 4.3, we discussed interpreting remainders as fractions. And fractions are helpful when we are dividing something, if we're length, weight, distance, time, anything that we can use that where a fraction would make sense. But now we're going to use remainders, but we're going to do 3 different ways of how we can interpret our remainder. And we're going to use the example on page 152, and this is Ben, and Ben is a tour guide. And let's look at our numbers here. So Ben is a tour guide and can take no more than 7 people at a time on a tour. Okay. If 80 people want to go on his tour, how many groups of 7 people can he take? Okay. Well, first, before we do anything, let's identify our numbers and what we have here. So let's look at, we have a total, let's say 80 people, right? Let's use that as because that's our big number. So we know we have 80 people, okay? And we need to divide them, right? So if Ben can take no more than 7 people, that means each tour has 7 people on it. I see I just made a spelling mistake here. Yes, P-E-O, yes, people, yes. So if he can take no more than 7 people, so each tour has 7 people, no more than 7 people. So he has 80 people, so we're going to highlight that as well, because we're going to use that information as well. And so the way this is going to look, let's identify our divisor. So we have 80 people, and we're going to divide it by 7. So our divisor is going to be 7. And that means our dividend is 80. So, perfect, and I'm going to go ahead and erase this. So we're going to set it up like, you can do it like this, 80 divided by 7. Or what I'm going to do is 80 divided by 7. So, again, remember, with division, we can look at it, 80 divided by 7 gives me what? Or what times 7 gives me 80. Okay, now unfortunately there's no 7's multiples of 7 don't include 80. And that's okay. We're going to figure out how we can solve this problem. So remember, we're looking at it as like, what times 7 gets me close to 80? If it was a multiple of 7, it'd be great, but it's not. So we can always start off with 10. Okay, let's do, 10 is good. Like if you're not sure, you're doing division, you're not just sure where to start, it's a big number, start off with 10, or 20, start off with a multiple of 10. That will usually help and get you close. So 10 times 7, remember this is my divisor, and 10 times 7 gives me 70. So if I had 70 people, and I had groups of 7, I would have 10 groups of 7. But I don't have 70 people, I have 80. So we can go up 1. 11 times 7 gives us, 77. And remember, this is saying if I had 77 people, and I split them into groups of 7, I would have 11 groups. Still not 80, let's try one more. 12 times 7. So that should give me 84, which unfortunately is too many. I don't have 84 people, I have 80 people. So let's erase that. But we know we're close. We know it's in between 11 and 12. We know the answer is going to be between 11 and 12. So let's look at this. So let's use 11 for now, okay? Because that gets us close. So let's do 11 times 7 gives us 77. Now we have to find out the difference between 77 and 80. Remember, 77 gets us close, but we have a total of 80. So what's our remainder? Our remainder is 3. So let's hit the first question first. Mr. Carey, why wouldn't we just use fractions? We already know how to use fractions. Let's just use that. So, okay. I mean, we could. Wouldn't be wrong. So we put remember, the remainder on top, the divisor on the bottom, and that gives us 11 3/7. It's not entirely helpful, though, when it comes to tours. Because remember, it says how many groups of 7 people can he take? So imagine Ben going to his boss and saying, hey boss, I can take 11 3/7 of a group. It's not going to make sense. I mean, what is 3/7 of a group? Okay. So option 1, so this is how we're going to interpret our remainder. This is, again, part 2. So the first option we can do is use only the quotient. Essentially, all we're going to do is just ignore the remainder. Okay, that's when it says use only the quotient. I can just ignore the remainder. So I know what my remainder is. I know it's 3. I'm just going to ignore it like it doesn't belong. So then my answer would be done. My answer is, how many groups of 7 people can he take? Ben can take 11 groups of 7. And that would be your answer. I'm ignoring the remainder because I don't really need it. Because, I mean, if I interpret the question, how many groups of 7 people can he take? Ben can take 11 groups of 7. That's exactly how many he can take. So that would be that'd be done. 11 times 7 is 77. You have the remainder of 3. Just ignore the remainder, and then you're done. Okay, so that's one way. Now, if the question were asked differently, as they usually do ask the questions differently, we're going to keep this up here. There we go. Keep that. All right, and let's delete. I'm going to delete all this. All right, and I still have my numbers up there. So now, instead of using the quotient, we're going to add 1 to the quotient. And I'll show you how that's helpful to us. So let's go into here. Use only the quotient. So that was number 1. That was our second method of interpreting the remainder. The first being fractions, and the second now being using only the quotient. Now, instead of using only the quotient, we are going to add 1 to the quotient. Okay, and this is kind of helpful because if they were to ask the question a different way, we would have to interpret the remainder a different way. So if 80 people want to go on this tour, how many groups of 7 people can he take? Our original answer is Ben can take exactly 11 groups of 7. Okay, now, what if they said, if 80 people want to go on the tour, how many tours? So watch this. I'm going to change the question here. How many tours? I'll keep it in capital. How many tours can he take? Again, it's kind of the same question. I'm just, I'm interpreting what I'm asking in a different way. Again, Ben can still take only 7 people on a tour. He still has 80 people. But now I don't need to know exactly how many tours of 7 Ben can take. I want to know how many tours total he can take. Okay. And again, this wouldn't help us to use the remainder, right? Ben can take 11 3/7 of a tour. What is 3/7 of a tour? How do I interpret? Does that mean he can only give a group 3/7 of a tour? Like they only get to see 3 things? Like, what does that mean? So instead of, we know Ben can take 11 tours of 7 people, but what about, and I'm going to show you, right? Let's do this. Let's draw my circles. Now watch this. I'm going to draw 1, 2. Now these are my groups, right? Got my little groups. Awesome. All right, I got 4, 8. I got 8 groups. I've got 9 groups. I've got 10 groups. And I have my 11 groups. Okay, so imagine these 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Imagine these are my tour groups, right? And let's say I'm going to add, I've already said I can have 7 in each. So let's count up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are my people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. So I have my 11 groups, and each of them has 7 in there. So if we count by sevens, 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63, 72, 77. Perfect. The problem is I have these little guys, they're standing right there. Those are my guys that aren't included. That's my remainder. Remember, I have 3. That's my remainder. They're just all alone. They don't get to go on a tour, which is sad. But what if they can go on a tour? And I guess the question would be, why can't they go on a tour? Because if you look at here, it doesn't say Ben can only take 7 people. It says can take no more than 7 people. That means he could take a tour of 1, a tour of 6, a tour of 2. It doesn't matter, right? So we're going to include this. This is how we would interpret this remainder. We're going to add 1 to the quotient because watch. If I have my little tour group here, I'm covering up my group, sorry. There's my group again. All right, 1, 2, 3. Now, how many groups do I have? Well, let's count them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is we're going to add 1 to the quotient. So you're rounding up, without really rounding. You're just saying whatever my quotient is, I'm going to add 1 to it. And my answer would be Ben can take 12 tours. Why can he take 12 tours? Because he can take 11 groups of 7 and 1 group of 3 for a total of 12 tours. So that's the third way we've learned, second one today, of ignoring, just using only the quotient and now adding 1 to the quotient, which is pretty cool. So now our last way, which is, it's kind of, we're already doing it right now, but it's called using only the remainder. So the cool thing here is use only the remainder. And again, this all depends on what question is being asked, right? So you have to look carefully at the question. You have to read carefully. If 80 people want to go on this tour, how many tours can he take? He can take 12 tours. Do I care that tour only has 3 people? No, not really. It's just asking me how many tours. All right. So now if we're only using the remainder, and I'm going to erase, let's see if I can erase all this. All right. So, and I'm going to keep my little guys up here and gals on my tour because this is using only the remainder. So now I don't have to do anything differently. So if the question were to ask, Ben gives tours to all 80 people. After he completes the tours for groups of 7 people, how many people are in his last tour? Okay, so that would just require me changing, right? That would just require me, I'm going to erase all my little highlights here. So that would require me changing the question a little bit. If 80 people want to go on his tour, right, I could change it to look like this. How many tours can he take? Let's do this. How many people would be on his last tour. So, and the cool thing is, you don't really have to do anything. Like if you just do your division, you don't even have to think of what the answer is, because look, what's my remainder? 3. That represents people. Remember, I have 80 people. I'm dividing them into groups of 7. That means I will have a total of 11 groups of 7 people, and I'll have 3 people who aren't in a group. And that's your answer, right? How do I know that? Well, look, we drew it out. Watch. See if I can erase. So remember, this is my wavered little group of only 3 people. They showed up late or something. Doesn't matter. But they're all by themselves. But they still have a group. They still get to go on his tour because, remember, we read carefully, can take no more than 7 people. He can take as many people as he wants as long as it's not more than 7. So our answer, how many people would be on his last tour? Okay. I would say 3 people would be on his last tour. And let's move that somewhere where we can actually see it. There, 3 people would be on his last tour. And that's the answer. Then that's done, right? So, but how do we know what we're going to use, right? How do we know if we're going to use only the quotient? How do we know if we're going to add 1 to the quotient? How do we know if we're only going to use the remainder? Well, it all depends on what the question's asking you. And this is why we do careful reading. This is why I stress a lot to my students that don't just get confused by the numbers. Look exactly what they're asking you. So go straight to the question, because they give you so much information and it can be easily kind of misinterpreted. So this is where you just say, how many people would be on his last tour? Okay, that's what I need to find out. So then you would go, okay, well, the only thing I really care about is the remainder. Or if you want, you can draw out all your circles here and then go, oh, my last tour would have 3 people. That's totally fine. So we'll do, I think we can maybe do one more, and this will be a quick one. So let's X all that out. X everything, perfect. All right, our last one. So this is, and I use this in class, and it's actually kind of funny here. But if I say, Mr. Carey's class is driven to field trips in vans. Well, we're going to assume all of our parents have vans, so that's why I said that. Are driven to field trip in vans. Each van holds, now this is an adaptation of page 152, but we're going to say each van holds, let's say, 5 students. How many vans are needed for 21 students? Because we have 21 students in our class. So this is very relevant to what we're going to be doing. So let's look at this, and I'm going to highlight my information that I care about. Each van holds 5 students. And then my question, how many vans are needed for 21 students? So this is kind of cool because they give us the information we need. I have a total of 21 students. So if I were to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, all in a line. And I'm going to divide them by fifths, right? So, here's, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this isn't, I know it's not perfect, but there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I divided my students by fifths. So instead of looking at my messy drawing, let's figure out what that actually looks like, okay? So the way we set it up is going to be 21 divided by 5. Or let's do this, 21 divided by 5. So think about what times 5 gives us close to 21. That's right, 4. 4 times 5 gives us 20. And then we have a remainder of 1. So now, again, I can't use, if the principal asks me, hey, Mr. Carey, how many vans do you need for 21 students? Oh, well, I need 4 with a remainder of 1. Right? That doesn't really make any sense, nor would I want to say this. If I use my fractions, remember, remainder on top and divisor on the bottom. Oh, yes, Mrs. Principal, I need 4 1/5 of a van. Well, how do you have a fifth of a van, right? So we need to interpret this a little better. That doesn't really make sense to anybody. So what we're going to do, this is where I would interpret the remainder. So if I use only the quotient, okay, remember that's step 1, I would only have 4 vans. Which then, this student right there, I guess that student doesn't get to go on our field trip, which would be sad. So we can't use only the quotient, okay? We wouldn't really just use the remainder because that doesn't help us. That's not what it's asking. It's not asking us how many do you have left, how many students don't have a ride. It's asking us how many vans are needed for 21 students. Okay, so let's add 1 to our quotient. So there's my 4. I'm going to add 1, and that gives me 5. I will need 5 vans. And will I need 5 vans? Sure, I could do with 5 vans. Do I have to have, or do I need to have, 5 students in each van perfectly? No, I don't. It'd be nice, but I don't really need it. All right, these are my vans, right? And let's draw my circle, and there's my 5th van. All right, so look, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and there's 21. So one van could be by itself and have a student, or I could redistribute these. But my answer is going to be I need 5 vans. So I can go to the principal and say, Mrs. Principal, I need 5 vans because I have 21 students. 4 is not going to be enough, so 5 will be perfect. All right, stay tuned for our next lesson, and that's going to be lesson 4.4, and we get to divide the tens, hundreds, and thousands. For those of you that thought renaming numbers was a thing of the past, chapter 3, it's back. Remember, if I have 100, I could have 100, 100s, or I could have 10 tens. That's a lot of fun. But you're going to find out how helpful this will be when it comes into division. So, for now, this is Mr. Carey signing off. I will see you all later, and stay tuned for my next video, chapter 4.4, dividing tens, hundreds, and thousands.